gosh.
Yeah, if I didn't take that nap, I'd be even worse.
I just had extra coffee.
I was thinking about doing coffee on the way over here. Dude, it's 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
No,
don't do that.
I know. The ones who are gonna ask a lot of questions are using it.
Is it the portobello mushroom? You got the chicken or nice?
They're gonna be ready to go. That's all right. Where's
Yeah, stickers.
Yeah.
What should I? You want one of mine? I want to put everybody's we'll put tropic coffee.
2 more minutes.
yeah.
Woke up too early, Beth. Oh, yeah.
We told Brandon that was his job.
Brando,
Get a pass for tonight.
we will help.
Crowd control.
Okay.
Depends on what your watch says there.
Okay.
It's the mayor's watch is the official time.
It is now 7:30. I will call everyone back to order and continue our open session, and I would request that, Madam Clerk, you do another roll call for us, please.
Councilmember Brando Cruz,
Here.
Councilmember Melissa Lamatina,
Here.
Councilmember David Oro,
Here.
Vice Mayor Mark Joseph,
Here.
Mayor Pierre Washington.
Here. And so no one disappeared from earlier, huh? All accounted for. We will move into our public comment. At this time, I'd like to open up a public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. See anyone walking up? Anybody online?
I have no one online and no cards.
Okay. So then, okay, we have one.
I just want to say that was a nice night tonight, and it was nice we saw some new people, and it's great to have this once in a while because it makes the community come together. So thank you.
Yeah, it was very nice, very nice. Thank you, Fran. Any other public comment? We'll close public comment and then move on to agenda changes. If there are no agenda changes, I'll accept the motion to accept. Oh, nothing. Okay. No consent. Business. Moving on to business, item number 6, fiscal year 2024, 2025 mid-year budget amendments. Mr. Gomez.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the public. There we go. Juan Gomez, Finance Director, Interim Assistant City Manager. Tonight, we're going to present the fiscal year 24-25 mid-year budget. With that said, the mid-year budget process is just a true-up of the budget where we work with, finance works with departments to figure out the true-up of what they need for the rest of the year. So it's not a full in-depth budget process like the original budget that was adopted in June. It's essentially a true-up of that budget to determine what is needed and any adjusting entries that are needing to be entered and put into the budget for this fiscal year. So with that said, we have different fund types. We have the general fund, which is the city's main operating fund. We have enterprise funds, which are business type activity funds, water, sewer, and recycled water. And then we have the internal service funds, which are funds, for example, building maintenance, our fleet services, information technology, and legal services. We also have, finally, our special revenue funds. Special revenue funds are gas tax, lighting, landscape assessment districts, grants, Measure T and Measure A. So those particular funds received in those funds can only be used for a specific purpose. So every time we look at a budget, there are certain desired outcomes we like to come to. One is have a balanced general fund operating budget. Just like when you're at home, you want to make sure all the revenues that you receive cover all the expenditures that you're going to spend. You don't want to run deficits. Occasionally, it's okay to run a deficit, but there has to be a plan for that. You've built up reserves over the last couple of years. You're building a savings account for certain large projects, and that's okay in any fiscal year. We want to continue to meet the reserve requirements. Certain funds have debt service requirements, which we have to maintain those in our bank in order to fund debt service. And finally, we want to have the long-term fiscal sustainability of all the funds. So part of my job and the city manager's job is to make sure long-term fiscal sustainability for the city is looked after and that we continue to maintain that so the city is a continued ongoing operation. So with that, we'll start with the largest main operating fund of the city, which is the general fund. Going back, when council adopted the original budget in June of '24, this is what the budget looked like. Revenues, 31.6 million, expenditures, 31.6 million. We had a balanced budget in June of 2024. We since had a transfer. At that time, we included a transfer of 250,000, where we're dipping into that cash reserve and we're moving it into the Parks Repair and Replacement Renovation Fund. That's to fund future projects for parks projects. We're building up those piggy banks and those ISFs, those internal service funds, to build large projects in the future. So since then, since the original budget was adopted, we had an adjusted budget. As you can see here, we had a net operating deficit here of $200,000. That's a result of purchase orders that were encumbered the previous fiscal year. We didn't finish the job, or we didn't finish the work with those purchase orders, so hence we need to roll those purchase orders over to the new fiscal year with budget. We had that same transfer of $250,000. The operating deficit here is $450,000. Now, we're here tonight for the proposed amendments for the mid-year budget. We are proposing an increase in revenues of $1 million and an increase in expenditures of roughly $800,000. So if you see here, our net operating deficit went from $200,000 to a surplus of $243,000. So as we look at this last column here at the proposed amended budget, even after the $250,000 transfer to the Parks Renovation and Replacement, we're ending up the year with a deficit of $207,000. So in looking at the fund balances for the budget, you can see the general fund contingency has about $7.9 million. That equates to 25% of general fund operating expenses. That's where we want to be. That's what our fiscal policy says we should be, 25%. All other is 1.6. All other includes mainly developer contributions. The developer that's building around town deposits money with the city. We in turn turn around and hire consultants, plan check engineers, and so forth from those funds. It's called a developer fund. The unassigned is $1 million. The unassigned is money that hasn't been committed or is not restricted. So it's unrestricted and not committed, meaning council hasn't earmarked it for any particular purpose, and it's not restricted for any particular purpose. So with that said, council at that point knows that at the beginning of the year, they had $1 million of unrestricted, undesignated fund balance. So as we moved here to the proposed mid-year, we're looking at a fund balance here of $11.4 million. Our general fund contingency went from 7.9 to $8.2 million. All other, 1.1, and unassigned went to $1.9 million. Now, we only saw a $203,000, if I go back to this one, a $207,000 deficit. How did we actually go from 7.9 to 10.5 to 11.4? Well, that's a difference of $833,000. The reason is in between there, we had our year-end financial report, or ACFR, Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. So if you remember, the adopted budget is adopted in June of '24. Our Annual Comprehensive Financial Report is completed in December of '24. We're now here in February of '25. So in between there, the ACFR showed a $1 million more positive results than we expected. We expected a $4.7 million deficit for fiscal year '24, but we actually ended up only with a $3.7 million deficit. So hence, that's where we came up with a net positive $1 million minus that $207,000 brings us to that $833,000. So here are the adjustments. This is what we're proposing tonight for council approval. General fund adjustments up $1 million, $458,000 in property tax. That includes secured property tax, property transfer tax, and prior year tax. Property transfer tax was a result of a large property that was sold over in the Green Island area. That was where the 300 Boone and 10 Middleton. That's where the IKEA building is, and where the Biaggi Brothers building is. That was sold to a investment developer. Real estate. Exeter is the name. It's all public record. But that was sold for roughly $202 million. When a property is sold, the city gets a portion of that in property transfer tax revenue. Also, that property, as you know, when you sell a property, it's reassessed to the current value. Interest revenue, we're increasing that almost $500,000. Interest rates continue to be a favorable interest rate environment for the investor. So if you're an investor in fixed incomes, U.S. Treasury, agencies, bonds, corporate bonds, et cetera, that is what the city invests in. The interest rates continue to be high, not so good on the flip side for people looking to buy a home, mortgage interest rates, car loans, et cetera, credit card rates. If that's high, on the flip side, the investors also get a larger rate of return. These, for example, are some of the investment vehicles that the city is in. We are in CAMP, which is a pooled money market fund. We are in LAIF, which is also a pooled money market fund that's run by the state of California. And we have some funds with Chandler Asset Management, which is a investment management company that we contract with. You can see for taking very little risk and essentially being in a money market, meaning we have access to our money immediately, we're earning roughly 4.5%. Again, developer contributions. This is an increase in those monies that we receive as building activity continues throughout the city. We get funds in, and then that goes out on the expense side. Insurance reimbursement, we're increasing that $181,000. That was mainly attributed to the water treatment plant vandalism. If you remember, that water treatment plant was broken in, roughly $132,000 worth of damage. We are going to seek that from our insurance, our pooled liability insurance for that. Transit occupancy tax is the one that's adjusted downwards, $409,000. That is essentially a combination of two things. One is the delayed opening of the Home to Suites Hotel here, and also a lower, softer demand for room rates. We don't expect the opening of the Home to Suites this fiscal year, although the website has that you can reserve this starting this September. But again, that's next fiscal year, so we'll incorporate that in next fiscal year's budget. But for this fiscal year that ends June 30th, 2025, we're not expecting that hotel to be open in time. I wanted to bring this up to show you how TOT by jurisdiction compares. As you can see, American Canyon has roughly 313 available rooms. We collected last year $1.4 million. Our general fund, TOT is 5% of the general fund. And you can see other agencies around the Napa Valley. You have Calistoga and Yountville. They rely on TOT tax to the tune of almost 2/3. So 2/3 of the general fund revenues are from TOT. American Canyon relies on TOT to the tune of 5%, so not a whole lot. As you can see here, our occupancy rate in American Canyon is approximately 72%. Average daily room rate here in the city is $160. You can see how that compares with the neighbors up north. You have Yountville almost at $700. Everybody's close to $600 with the exception of Napa. So we are the lowest room rate in Napa Valley, but you can see even with that demand here, as we look at 71% occupancy with a room rate, year over year, we're down 4.3%. Year over year percentage in revenue is 5.4. So we're taking that into account. The delay in home to suites and also the softening of demand for room rates. This is a slide of our property tax. So we're projected to receive $3.8 million in sales tax. As you can see here, business and industry makes up 36% of that. That's the biggest chunk of sales tax revenue. Last year at the same year, business and industry was 39%. That is a result of the closure of IKEA, which is happening anytime this month. They were a sales tax contributor. They are closing down that operation. As we move on to subsequent fiscal years, that piece of that pie will continue to shrink. So this is where we end up the mid-year for 25, $32.5 million. You can see that the largest chunk of that revenue continues to be property tax. As you saw, Yountville, Calistoga relied on TOT 66%. We rely about half of our revenues on property tax. Again, sales tax, we're expecting the next year or two to decrease because of the loss of the warehouse, which means that share of the property tax pie will continue to grow. In the next year or two, I estimate that property tax will probably be roughly 50% of our general fund revenues. You can see sales taxes. Sales tax is the next largest one at 3.8. Sales tax and interfund transfers roughly around $3.8 million. Transfers in for interfund support services of $3.5 million. That is support services to the enterprise funds, the internal service funds, the special revenue funds. So those funds don't have their own city manager or finance director or HR officer. So we carve out a portion of what we spend to hire, say, water treatment operators, to run payroll, to run AP. There's a portion that those funds pay for those services that reside in the general fund. So that's to the tune of $3.5 million. One other note is franchise fees here. Franchise fees is gas, electric, and waste, solid waste, $1.2 million. Again, as more houses and businesses open up here, there's going to be a demand for more electricity, gas, solid waste, et cetera, so we can continue to expect those to inch up a little bit. That was the general fund revenues. We'll jump into general fund expenditures. We saw an increase in revenues of $1 million. We're proposing an increase of almost $800,000 in expenses. As we saw the revenue coming in for that property damage of $181, that's also mostly paid out. We've actually, for all intents and purposes, paid out a majority of that for security services, fence repair, damage to city property, et cetera. So for the most part, we've paid that and we're expecting to receive that back. So hence we have to account for that here. $177,000 increase for city legal expenses. That is $120,000 related to water-related legal issues and $81,000 for community development legal expenses. $123,000 increase in the park maintenance water use. This is the adjustment based on trends. So we've looked over the last 6 months and we've seen what the parks have used. We've used a lot more water than we have historically used. We are reviewing the usage right now, so we're working with the park maintenance department to figure out if there's a leak, they're overwatering, As you recall, we recently installed new irrigation controllers, so we want to make sure that those are working fine. So we're currently working with them to review that. But as the trend continues right now, it's looking like they're going to need another $123,000 for all city parks. $85,000 additional parks contract work. That's related to additional tree work, cleanup at our property here on the corner on 11 Teresa. That includes smaller projects like our Citizens Academy capstone project, plants, materials, and supplies. We're requesting $85,000 there. And then, as most of you have seen downstairs, there's a new HR office space. HR office is a training annex. That whole remodel and furniture and so forth, office space, was roughly $100,000. We offsetted that with salary savings from the assistant city manager. That's position is vacated. Portion of that salary was paid for from the HR division, so we have some savings there. So the net cost there to the HR budget is $48,000. And then finally, one category that we're adjusting downwards is going to be the salary. So we have $328,000 in projected salary savings, mainly attributed to administration, $214,000. Again, that's the vacant assistant city manager position, the executive assistant, that continues to be vacant. And then I'm filling in as the interim assistant city manager, but a lot of my salary is still charged to finance, since I'm also the finance director. So we have some savings there in administration. Police, savings of $40,000. That's just budgeting at a higher step than the folks that were hired. And then Parks and Recreation, mainly attributed to part-time employees, $91,000 there. So as we wrap up the general fund here with the expenses, you can see the largest expense here is still going to be supplies and services at 9.5, followed by the sheriff contract at $9.4 million. Salaries, benefits, retirement, and OPEB are all salaries and benefits related to employee salaries and benefits. That roughly equates to 30%. So really, we got three big chunks of expenditures that really eat up the expenditure budget: sheriff's contract, supplies and services, and salary and benefits for employees. Again, that's kind of expected. We're a government agency. We don't produce any parts or equipment. We are a service organization, so the majority of it is going to be service-based expenses. That concludes the general fund. We'll move on to special revenue funds. Special revenue funds I've highlighted here. I'm not going to go through the current amendment or the proposed. I'm going to just highlight what we have highlighted here in yellow, the proposed amendments. Revenues, we're increasing in the special revenue funds. Remember, special revenue funds are gas tax, Measure T, Measure A, et cetera. $173,000 in revenues and $298,000 increase in expenditures. Those are made up of three large categories here. For revenues, $105,000 for a national opioid settlement. We've created a new fund called the National Opioid Settlement Fund. We've actually already received $105,000. That is a countrywide program settlement with pharmaceutical, drug companies, drug stores, et cetera, that every agency that opted to put into it is receiving money for several things. One is going to be for training of its officers and EMS and firefighter personnel, also supplies for like Narcan for overdoses, et cetera. So we have received $105,000. We applied for a state water arrearage program, $38,000. That was, state had some, I wouldn't say excess ARPA money, but they had some available ARPA money that we applied for, and we got $38,000. We hence turned that around and paid off a lot of the delinquents accounts on our utility customers that were delinquent, and then $15,000 increase in interest for the Community Facilities District Fund 281. We've adjusted a lot of the funds, the interest. So we were expecting interest revenue to kind of taper off and come down as hopefully inflation would come down, interest rates would come down. That never happened. There's still Inflation is still high, interest rates are still high, so I may not highlight all the funds here, but all the funds had an upward tick in interest revenue. Expenses here, we do have a general plan special revenue fund, $139,000 increase in expenditures, and that was to continue to work on the general plan and finalize that. $38,000 to the water fund. So we received the $38,000 from the state water arrearages program. We transferred it to the water fund. From there, we credited customers' accounts. And then we are using a portion of that opioid settlement money, $25,000 for testing kits for the police department, which we're expected to use this year. Capital project funds are funds that we use to fund our capital projects, including impact fees, traffic impact fees, park impact fees, civic facilities impact fees. Revenues were adjusting downwards $1.6 million and a small uptick in expenditures of $20,000. Really, the revenue adjustment comes from traffic impact fees related to Oat Hill, Hampton Inn, and Sun Square. Oat Hill is providing the infrastructure improvements themselves on a reimbursement basis, so we're not collecting the impact fees up front, but we're rather having them do the work, off-site improvements. Hampton Inn and Sun Squares, we don't anticipate that those will be online this fiscal year, so we're delaying those revenues, those impact fees, until the next fiscal year. Zero water footprint, $57,000. CIP fund, $472,000 increase. That relates to Napa Cove. They paid us roughly $223,000 for traffic improvements along Melvin. And then Copart, over in the Green Island, $229,000 for developer in lieu fees. And then $75,000 undergrounding utility developer in lieu was paid for by the chicken guy to underground the utilities at that property. We'll jump into the water enterprise. This is the operations piece. So the water and sewer have several funds in them. They have the operations funds, which is the main fund. That tells you your day-to-day activity, how much revenue we're going in, how much does it cost to fund this operation. And then we have water capacity fees, which is developers pay for kind of buying into the system. And then we have a water CIP and then a water debt. So there's a bunch of funds that make up the water enterprise. There's about 5 funds, but this one here is the nuts and bolts. This is the operations. So as you can see, when we adopted the budget and when we have the current amended budget, we have $10.5 million in revenues, and we have $17.5 million in expenses. That is a deficit of almost $7 million. The proposed adjustments increases revenue $103,000, increases expenses $950-ish thousand. You can see the proposed is the deficit gets worse, 7.7, but there's a story behind that. Revenues, those are the small adjustments in revenues. We got a refund, WSRB refund, $40,000 interest revenue adjustment. The expenditures, increasing expenses, $669,000 for additional water purchase from the city of Vallejo. Every year, NBA shuts down, and we have to purchase water from different sources. Our 2 available sources to purchase outside of NBA are the city of Napa and the city of Vallejo. City of Napa is cheaper water. They can't provide us the supply that we need. So we have to go to our second source, which is City of Vallejo. City of Vallejo is more expensive, so we're expecting to pay an additional $669,000 in available water. So when we increased Vallejo water, we didn't increase NBA. So NBA is shut down. We're not buying water from them, but we didn't adjust that down. We wanted to provide ourselves some flexibility in there. A lot of ups and downs. We wanted just to make sure that there's an emergency, a main break or anything like that, we wouldn't have to come back. So for the most part, we're asking for $669,000, but we may not entirely use the entire budget. $120,000 related to water legal expenses. As you saw on the general fund, We were increasing expenses by 120,000, but that's paid for by the water fund. Water fund's gonna transfer money into the general fund. And then $110,000 increase in chemical cost increase. Again, we're not immune from inflation. Gas prices, we gotta run our city vehicles, PG&E, water, chemicals, all that is going up. Kaiser bills, we feel the inflation pressure as well. So this is one where chemical increases have gone up multiple times. So it's getting expensive, again, to treat water. I wanted to show this graph because this is what we brought to council when we adopted the rate study. When I go back here, we show a $7.8 million deficit, but part of that was intentional, meaning in fiscal year 23, you can see we had cash balances of roughly $9.2 million. We were expected, you see that red arrow, we were expected to bring that down into the minimum target reserve balance. So we systematically are using cash balances that are in these reserves to fund a lot of these CIP projects. We have, sorry, I forgot to mention, we have roughly $5.5 million in CIP projects that are coming out of water operations. Rancho's a big one at 2.9 million. Knightsbridge is another big one. So we have a lot of CIP projects that are happening this fiscal year that are being funded by water operations reserve balances. So moving forward, we're going to be tracking that green line, which is the minimum target reserve. This is now the water enterprise as a whole. The water enterprise whole includes operations and all those other funds that I had mentioned. Again, we're transferring we see that deficit of 6.9 million, almost $7 million, but here we're transferring $5.8 million into the CIP. We have Rancho, Knightsbridge, Green Island Road, Zone 5 water pump station, SCADA, and media replacement. So $7 million, we're transferring 5.8. We also had a large one-time expenditure of the media filters, which was roughly $1.1 million. So when I look at the entire operation, we had roughly $7 million in expenses, 5.8 and about 1.1, 1.2. We really had kind of a balanced budget. Again, as I mentioned, we build these reserves up because we don't redo a whole neighborhood with streets and utilities every fiscal year. We have to build up some of these reserves. So you can see we've built them up, and then now we're drawing those down. I highlighted there an adjustment of revenues, $3.3 million. The biggest is a $3.4 million water capacity fee from the Oat Hill development, as is with the traffic impact fees, where that developer is going to actually make the offsite improvements. They're also going to make improvements to the water system. One is to build a larger tank. So they're doing those improvements there. We're not collecting those fees. This is the same thing, the wastewater enterprise operations. You can see we started the year with a $4.6 million deficit. We're basically the same, very small adjustments. I didn't go into the adjustments because they're really minor there. But we are transferring $4.4 million from wastewater into CIP projects. Again, Rancho is a big one at 1.3. Sewer Station 4, another big one at $1.8 million, and the Andrew Road sewer repair at $700,000. Kind of the same thing. We've built these reserves up. We're now finally went out to bid for these large projects, and we're ready to put shovels in the ground for some of these. Again, that large adjustment is Oat Hill, Hampton Inn, and Sun Square. Again, Oat Hill's doing those offsite improvements. Hampton Inn and Sun Square, we don't expect to come to fruition in terms of paying impact fees this fiscal year. And then we increased expenses $103,000 from the CIP reserve to fund that $700,000 Andrew Road Street repair. Here again, this is a graph from our rate study. You can see in fiscal year 23, fiscal year 23 here, we had roughly $7.6 million. We've now are drawing that down to fund a lot of these CIP projects, and you can see we're going, again, track that green line, which is the minimum reserve target. The minimum reserve target is what we need for debt service in compliance. We do have some loans with the state. They require us to have some reserves in there, so we want to have that $2.5 million in reserve. Recycled water enterprise, small adjustments here. We're just proposing $73,000 increase in expenditures, $40,000 in treatment chemicals. Again, treatment chemicals are high. And then $40,000 for a NBWRA city share. That's the North Bay Water Reuse Program. We pay a membership into that North Bay Reuse Program. They did, in fact, help us with the $1.5 million Napa County ARPA fund for the recycled water expansion. So that was a big win being part of that membership as well. Again, the internal service funds are similar to enterprise funds, but they're for internal funds, meaning the customers is the city itself. Meaning the finance, city managers, parks, they help fund legal services, IT services, fleet services, et cetera. Small adjustments there in revenues of $4,000 and $241,000 increase in expenditures. Expenditures are legal services. We need an increase of $200,000. We are tracking high on legal costs. The original budget on legal expenses was $360,000. So far this year, we've spent $370,000. So we're adding for the last 5 months of the fiscal year an additional $200,000. And then the last item there is $28,000 in IT software cost. That is a program called Placer AI, which is an analytical software and foot traffic analyzing software. Last year we purchased this. The city staff likes it, and now we're including it in the budget because it wasn't included in the original adopted budget. With that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Gomez. Very comprehensive and easy to understand as always, so thank you. I do have a question. It's probably more directed to you, Mr. Holly, and it's regarding the projected salary savings piece, where you talk about combining your role as a finance director and role as assistant city manager, and there are other roles that we have within the city. And I guess my only concern with that would be, I get cost savings and how we want to try to work those things out, but I'm more concerned of the quality of life for the employee that is doing double the job. How are we able to sustain that? And is there a game plan to say this is a temporary type fix? I can appreciate, like anyone else, cost savings, but I think mental health is really important, and if we're putting too much strain on our employees, I wanted to make sure we are aware of that possibility as well. If you could kind of like guide me through what your thought process is with that.
Yeah, happy to, Mayor. Thank you for the question. You're right. In general, we're not planning on having this savings be part of our budget package for next year. We're recognizing it now as part of this transaction as something that has occurred in real time, but as part of the 25-26 budget, we're planning to bring forward a series of staffing allocations that does not rely upon people doing 2 jobs or something like that. That's not a sustainable model. What we want to do is look at the most efficient way of the existing staff resources and getting the right positions in the right spots, and then hiring those positions. So in the last couple of months, Juan's done an amazing job filling in 2 roles, and continue to envision him taking some of these leadership roles on and then looking to backfill some of those other positions. So it's not a sustainable model forever. It's definitely a stopgap measure, and we're recognizing it, factually as part of the budget. But as a part of the 25-26 budget process, we will have a staffing allocation plan that looks at those vacancies and the other vacancies that we have.
Okay, thank you. And you are doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Mr. Gomez. With that, are there any clarifying questions or concerns from council?
I had raised all the issues I had during the finance subcommittee, so I'm pleased with the report, and we're doing as well as we can. Thank you.
Good. Well, hearing no others, I'd like to open up to public comment for items of number 6, if we have any questions from the public. about the finance.
Good evening, Beth Marcus. One, as usual, you do a fantastic job. It's easy to understand for us lay people. I do have a question, and I don't know if it really pertains to this or not, but, and you know, this is my biggest gripe. The jailhouse on on Napa Cove. The water is constantly flowing out of there. Does that have anything to do with what you're talking about? I mean, it's constantly flowing. You just see lots of water just going down the street, useless water. So I want a refund.
Juan doesn't have anything to do with that. If we have more questions, I'll have Erica come up and kind of talk about the incoming project. But our Melvin Road sidewalk project includes a significant storm drain component that we're putting in storm drains in the street. And so what you see now running in the gutter will be going into a pipe once that project is complete. So we've hired a contractor. Work will be beginning in the near future, so a fix is in the works.
But to clarify, that isn't our treated water, that's just stormwater,
It's just rainwater. It's just rainwater that is accumulated in and around the Napa Cove project. It's sitting in a basin right now and gets pumped out intermediately and runs in the gutter. And so in the future, it won't run in the gutter, it'll run in a pipe.
Through a pipe.
And that is included in the existing CIP. We're not proposing any budget adjustments or anything for that. It's a project that's, we have a contractor and we're moving forward.
But it is important to let the public know that isn't like a water leak that's been unaddressed for months. It's
Correct.
Stormwater. Yeah, it'll be temporary until Melvin Street project is finished, and I think that was awarded, so it's rolling. Okay.
Thank you for the question, Beth. Thank you. You have a comment?
My name is Joey Palma, a citizen of American Canyon. Looking at the graph and the forecast for the budget request for 2025, do you see any change for the forecast 25 to 26 with the same ratio of increase?
Yeah, the question is whether we're going to see the same increases, ratio increases for 26. The answer is yes. Again, we have certain things where you saw the majority of our expenses are labor costs, and we have memorandums of understanding in place which have minimum increases. We are seeing the same level of increases for health and dental insurance. That's Delta Dental and Kaiser, which we contract. In terms of property tax, we may see higher than average. We have a 2% CPI adjustment for the county property tax assessment. But again, you look around town and you see all the continued building activity. Hence, that brings in more properties online and more revenue. But there are certain expense categories that are affecting us substantially due to inflation. Again, it's going to be electricity costs, gasoline prices, water treatment chemicals. On the water enterprise funds, those are increasing a lot larger than inflation, and so is vehicle purchases. We are now purchasing police interceptors for roughly $85,000, $90,000, where 5-6 years ago we were buying them at $50,000. So we are seeing a lot of expense categories go up. Part of my job and the city manager's job is to make sure we're balanced. So we have to continue to see where those increases are and how those revenues and expenses kind of balance each other. So it's hard to say. The trajectory continues to go, everything's more expensive and will continue to be more expensive. Again, if we continue to build and properties come online, we're not getting a whole lot of sales tax. There's not a whole lot of businesses still propping up here, but there's a lot of residential development where we're gonna get some property tax from there.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Palma. Thank you. And
If
thank you
only
for
if
your
we could find a way to capture the chickens over in Rancho and collect their eggs and sell them, we get some additional revenue.
I had two questions. The first was, is I saw that you're trying to increase the budget of $250 for the parks. I know the last council voted for some coverings and toilets, permanent toilets, and I've talked to Erica numerous times about this. And so I hope with this increase that at least one of those will be able to be done. Again, I've talked to the Public Works person, Erica, and she has told me that there were some unforeseen costs that need to be addressed. And I hope that the 250 will be enough to address those so we can get toilets in our parks and some coverings. We now have hotter and hotter summers and times, and we need to start thinking about that for our citizens.
Okay.
The other,
Before you continue, I know who you are, and I know we know who you are, but people who are watching may not know who you are.
I'm sorry, my name is Hugh Marquez. I'm a resident of American Canyon. The other question was recycled water. I know that they've stopped the recycled water distribution at this time, and I know as a member of the committee that there was the concept of putting recycled water stations at a cost, a minimal cost, but at a cost. Was that considered in this budget at all? Is it an increase, a decrease, or I know there's going to be a decrease to put those water stations wherever they are, but has that been considered in this budget? Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. One is the recycled water is a CIP project, the recycled water fill stations. It is a current active CIP project in our CIP community capital improvement program. Secondly, so yes, we have the funds allocated for that, yes. Although I didn't go in depth on the CIP, that is already included in the recycled water fund. Second, in terms of the shade structures and the restrooms, those two also at Northampton, Silver Oak, for example, those are currently CIP projects as well. What I kind of ran through here was an in-depth analysis of the operating maintenance. So the increase in park maintenance that I showed was for maintenance, ongoing operational maintenance. But those two projects for Northampton and Silver Oak are CIP projects. They have a certain amount in that CIP project. Unfortunately, everything again is getting a lot more expensive, so our Public Works Director will come back to council with updated costs for those two projects and figure out what funding sources we want to use. But they are current CIP projects, but just looking at all the estimates coming in, we may not have enough and have to come back to council.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Marquez, and your answer,
I have a
Ms.
question.
Gomez. Yes, ma'am.
There's a deficit there for the IKEA building. Do you have any idea what's going to go in there?
We haven't heard anything yet
Okay.
on a potential tenant. Yeah. The property was sold November of 2024. We haven't heard anything yet of a new tenant. IKEA is still in there until the end of this month, but we haven't heard about a new potential tenant coming in.
I remember during our finance committee meeting, the vice mayor asked the question about once it is sold, there is a benefit to it being sold from a tax perspective. Could you kind of explain that?
Sure. When you buy a property 5-10 years ago, the purchase price is the assessed valuation. When a property is resold, so for example, the majority of property taxes over the last couple of years has averaged the CPI at a cap of 2% via Prop 13. So 2% is the max. So your property, if you've been there 20, 30 years, can only increase a maximum of 2% per year. When it's resold, it adjusts to the new market value of when it was sold. So older properties that get sold are reassessed at the current market value, hence we recapture a whole lot more of the assessed valuation, hence more revenue to the city.
Okay. And thank you for your question, Fran, and your answer, Mr. Gomez. Are there any other questions for public comment? Hearing none, I'd like to close public comment on item number 6 and return to council for any additional statements, questions, or a motion.
Well, if there are no other comments or concerns, I'm happy to make a motion that we approve resolution number 2025 next in order a resolution approving mid-year budget amendments to the fiscal year 2024-25 budget.
I second.
We have a second. Can I get a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Cruz,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamatina,
Yes.
Councilmember Oro.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Joseph,
Yes.
Mayor Washington.
Yes. Next business item is item number 7, Human Resource Annual Presentation. Mr. Holly?
Thank you, Mayor. Scott Corey, our Human Resources Officer, has a presentation.
Welcome,
Take it away,
Scott.
Scott.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This evening is our annual update on human resources, sort of the activities we've been doing and some of the highlights of some of the demographics we've been tracking. We will look at 5 areas this evening, an overview of some of our highlighted activities from the past year, 2024, some of our recruitment activity and how that's been tracking for this year, our workforce demographics, look at who we are and what our workforce looks like, and then some trends and succession planning issues moving forward, and then a little preview of what's ahead in 2025 in human resources. Always an exciting topic for everyone involved. So, all right. In 2024, one of the things we needed to do was build back Human Resources Division staffing. We had a staff member who left unexpectedly, was gone for a medical issue and then retired. And so it took us a minute to replace that person. As part of this year's budget adoption process, we reviewed and created 3 new classifications in human resources. We looked at all the work that was being done and realized it wasn't just 2 different positions, it was actually 3 different positions. And the council approved those new classifications. In December, we were very proud to appoint our former Executive Assistant Sherry Flathers as our new HR analyst in human resources. Starting on Monday, we'll be adding a office assistant as well to human resources. So Francis will be starting on Monday with us. Also, as part of the budget process, you may recall, we had about 14 new and updated classifications. Among those were some in the Public Works Department, which allowed the addition of some additional staff members. One of the things Human Resources does is we add additional positions, is we help the departments assess literally where are these people going to be sitting. And adding new positions in Public Works caused a bit of a crunch up on the 2nd floor as far as where the folks were going to be. Our city manager decided it was a good opportunity to create a dedicated HR office and training annex downstairs in suites 103 and 104. I think you've all had a chance to come down and see that great new space we have. We completed our move in December, and this is one of a series of what I see as, from the HR perspective, as purposeful investments in upgraded staff spaces that have come up over the past several years. They include some changes, some additions we've made at the water treatment facility, the water reclamation facility, and the new courtyard. Each of these, from a human resources perspective, is a tangible investment and comment on the importance of our staff to the organization, and really helps with morale and retention as an additional tangible item that the city invests. Among the things we identified was a need for additional development amongst our supervisors and mid-managers. And to help with that, we initiated a quarterly training program, some meetings with our mid-management and executive teams together, not separate. It was a joint gathering. And we've been talking about things like change management, the employee self-service implementation, the best team profile, and other organizational needs. We also, to help develop our staff, joined with other Napa Valley public agencies to launch the Napa Valley Regional Training Consortium. I don't know if that's the official name, but it sounded good to me, so I named it that. In partnership with the Center for Organization Effectiveness, this is a 5-level training program focused on professional development and excellence in public service. So far, 34 employees have participated in this program, and you build from level to level over the course of several years, from a foundations and excellence kind of program clear up through a leadership program if we decide to go that far with our employees. It's a great new resource. Employees have really enjoyed that program. To comply with the new state law and workplace safety, the city developed and implemented and trained all staff on our workplace violence prevention plan. We're also continuing the implementation we began in 2022 of the NeoGov platform. You may recall we started with implementing our recruitment tools and our onboarding tools for all of our new employees. All new employees have individualized portals now when they come on board, which gives them all their information to fill out their forms and their benefits and things like that. The next phase, which was completed this year, was the implementation of the learning and performance modules to enhance our ongoing staff training needs and to provide a modern and really robust and easy to use tool for assessing and tracking employee performance. The last step, we ended the year, sort of began the new year, with a transition to a new third-party administrator for our claims, which we've gone through and changed we've updated some of our claims processes and things, kind of tightened that up a little bit through that process. The city is continuing to experience a very strong interest in people wanting to work here. In 2024, we ran 13 recruitments, which is slightly below our historic average of 15 recruitments a year. But we received nearly 800 applications. We are making contact in the marketplace, and people are responding to our message and our opportunities here. One measure of this connection is that our applicant pool continues to diversify. We saw increases in the number of both Hispanic and African American applicants in 2024 and received more applications from people identifying as Hispanic than any other ethnic group for the first time since we started tracking this. This diversity is carrying through our hiring process, which is centered on knowledge, skills, and abilities of our applicants. One recent final group of 7 applicants for a traditionally male-dominated job class of plant operator was both ethnically diverse and was made up of 7 men and 3 women. The department hiring panel selected a woman as the most qualified applicant, and she started work today in a field where we normally see a lot of men in the plant operator arena. We focus on removing time from our hiring process whenever possible. This is an evaluation we do on each recruitment. We evaluate it and see what could we have done better, tighter, cleaner on that. Through that ongoing improvement process, in 2024, we cut our hiring time nearly in half from the prior year. Part of how we talk to ourselves as an organization and community for quite some time now has been the idea of we love everyone in American Canyon. Internally, this is borne out with 86% of our employees saying they would recommend working for the city, 90% feeling positive about working for the city, and 94% who plan to be here a year from now. 8 in 10 employees give the city high marks for demonstrating respect for employees of different cultures and belief systems. We also hear pretty routinely from new employees unsolicited comments, sometimes several weeks into their employment here, that go something along the line of, I've never felt so welcome any place else I've worked. Or, I felt welcome from the very first step along the process when I got the offer letter. Every one of our offer letters is signed by the city manager, often with a little note on there of welcome to the team. And right on through that, all the way through when they've gone through the HR process, we hand them off to their departments, which can be a little frightening for HR folks, in their work groups, and we're checking in with them weeks, months later, and they're very happy with the decision they made by coming here. They feel part of the team very quickly, and they're very pleased with how we do things here in American Canyon. So who is our full-time workforce? The average city employee is 45 years old, lives in American Canyon, has worked for the city for less than 5 years, and since 2021 is 4% more likely to identify as female. Even with a turnover rate of about 10 employees per year, the majority of the city's workforce is between 40 and 59 years of age, demonstrating an ability to attract mid-career applicants while retaining nearly a quarter of the workforce at 15 years or more service. We see a significant number of applications from people who live in Napa or Solano counties, who are starting out their jobs or have strong work experience in other parts of the Bay Area who want to get a good job with a reputable organization closer to home and doing work that supports the community, doing meaningful work. As I mentioned a moment ago, our applicant pool is increasingly diverse. So is our workforce. In the past 4 years, the number of employees identifying as Hispanic or African American has increased by 10% per group. We track that number because it's important to not only see who are you contacting and who are you connecting with and who's applying, but who is making it through the recruitment process, who's going through all the steps and interviews and all of that, and actually being hired at the end of that process. And they're tracking pretty well over the past 4 years since we've been tracking this more closely. We have all 5 identified generations currently in the workforce working here collaboratively across the organization, focused on getting the job done well and efficiently and learning from and supporting each other. Some trends that we've identified that we're going to be working on and continuing to work on. The city is rightly proud to be a place where careers are built. We're small enough to cross-train and large enough to have meaningful and challenging work to be done. We continue this commitment as we enter the second year of the Napa County Regional Consortium. We develop and implement an internal training academy for supervisors to fill some gaps we've identified over time. We fully implement the GeoGov training module and continue with our really terrific tuition reimbursement program, which supports formal degree programs and education for our employees. One of the things we'll be doing in 2025 is trying to quantify how many of our employees have actually gotten degrees through our program. It is a program that when I mention it to others in the HR field, they look at me like we've lost our marbles. But it's a significant investment in our employees, and it pays back in that they don't get their degree and run off, which is what my colleagues are afraid will happen. So it's been a really good program for our city. One area I look at each year is our ongoing focus on succession planning. Right now, today, we have 14 employees, or 18% of our full-time workforce, who are eligible to retire. By 2030, that number will grow to 23 employees, or 30% of our workforce. In HR, we're continuing to develop career ladders and work with and training opportunities for employees to grow into the leadership positions that may soon be vacated. All right, we're going to look ahead a little bit at what's coming in 2025 in human resources. We have 2 new key pieces of legislation we'll be implementing this year. One was a review of all of our job classifications to determine whether driver's licenses as a requirement are actually required as part of the job. This is an anti-discrimination measure that was adopted by the state legislature in SB 111, or 1100 rather, sorry. So we'll be doing that this year to make sure that those are aligned properly under that state law. This legislature also adopted AB 2561 this year, which requires an annual report on the job vacancy rate and what we're doing to get those filled. We'll be returning as part of the early part of the budget process, probably in April, with that information and that report. And this will help us identify additional efficiencies in our hiring process. We are redoubling our efforts to encourage and create a safe work environment across the organization and ensure risk management best practices are in place to reduce the risk of workplace injuries. HR will also continue its work with departments to analyze their internal staffing needs and get new or modified positions filled as quickly as possible. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Corey. Just one quick statement from me. During the open house tonight, I had 2 new hired employees, I guess. They came to me, and they were very complimentary and almost verbatim what you just said. I never felt for discomfortable working for an employer. And they actually were referring to you, Erica, and you, Norman, when they told me about that. So whoever you just hired at Public Works, really happy about how you guys welcomed them in. So thank you and a good job. Yeah, so, when you said that, it just, I mean, man, they said that to me just this evening. So thank you for your presentation. I'm going to open it up to council for any clarifying questions, concerns by the council. None? Vice Mayor Joseph.
Thank you for the report, Scott. The only thing, and I mentioned it to the city manager, it might be nice to see if we can track the number of hours associated with training in all of its various forms, so that can become another metric that we look at, just to see how much of that investment in terms of time. So that's about the only suggestion. I appreciate all the data. I tend to be a numbers nerd, so of course I would appreciate it. But it's good information. I'm glad we're tracking it and monitoring it and evaluating it. So thank you.
Councilmember Cruz.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for the report. Just one question is, what is our method of recruitment? Are we going out to the colleges, other facilities? What are we doing to recruit these folks?
We evaluate that with the hiring departments with each recruitment, and it's based somewhat on the history we've had and how difficult it has been to develop applicants, and how difficult we think it might be to get applicants. Let me give you an example for that. We are recruiting for the first time a chief plant operator position, and anytime you have a first-time recruitment for a position, it's just, you don't know what to expect. We did a plant operator recruitment, as I mentioned in the report, and we had over 200 applicants. Many of them appeared to be also somewhat qualified to be a CPO as well. We've yet to find the magic nut to reach out to find our CPOs. We're not getting quite the response we had hoped we would get, so we're continuing to refine that. We have seen a huge increase in the number of applicants we've been receiving simply by changing our advertising platform and going onto governmentjobs.gov. We've seen almost a twofold increase in the number of applications we got just from doing that, which is a platform used by a lot of our neighboring communities, Napa, Vallejo, Vacaville, Fairfield, others. And we were surprised by that. Typically that gets us enough applicants and it's a really good applicant pool. These are folks that are highly qualified individuals. So we tailor it with each recruitment. Sometimes in Park and Rec, we're looking for lifeguards or our recreation specialists who are a little more experienced. We'll send staff out to the local junior colleges, Napa Valley or others, Solano right now, and or Diablo and Contra Costa, and try to recruit those individuals. So it's part of our recruitment by recruitment analysis and figuring out how best can we reach our applicant pool.
Great, thanks, Scott.
Just to add on to that real quick, Councilmember Cruz, we also will do utility billing inserts. So we'll do that sometimes for our continuous recruitments, and that effort was made specifically at the suggestion of the City Council, about targeting local residents and how can we get that information to them. And we thought, well, here's a group of customers who are American Canyon residents, so let's send them that way. They have to open their bill usually, whether it's electronic or paper. So we've started doing that too.
Fantastic. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Scott. At this time, I'd like to open it to public comment for item number 7. Anyone online?
There is no one online.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott. I'd like to close public comment for item 7 and return to council for any additional statements or questions or a motion. Or is this just a file? Receive and file. Thank you, Scott. Received and will file. Moving right along, we're going to the management and staff oral reports. Mr. Holly?
Yeah, a couple of quick updates. Allie, Erica, and Brent all have a couple of quick updates for you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just here to remind everyone that tomorrow we have State of the City at the Adult Activity Center at 11 a.m. We hope that you and the community can enjoy us and join us as we watch the State of the City video and then learn more about all the wonderful things that we've been doing and then have lunch with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. The Community of American Canyon, Erica Almond-Smithies, Public Works Director. Just have some good news, as some of you are aware of, shared from our City Manager, Holly, last week. The Federal Economic Development Administration cleared the grant for advertising the long-awaited Green Island Road reconstruction project. We're working on getting the bid package online, but it is being published in the paper on the end of this Friday, but the hope is to get it online by either tomorrow or Thursday. So with that, yay. With the bid opening planned for April 8th. So the goal is to bring it to the following council meeting after that, or the first one in May, pending how the bid results come in.
Yay.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Glad you're feeling better.
Hello, Mayor, Council members. Brent Cooper, Community Development Director. I just have a development update on a few of our key yet sticky projects in town. I have 4 of them here for you. Following up with applicants and contacted the owners. First one here is the Home de Suisse, just on the highway here. Spoke with the property owner recently on Friday. He indicated that pretty much most of the interior improvements are completed, which is really good news. Some of the challenges they've had, they need to get a PG&E connection. It requires coordinating with Caltrans. Indicated PG&E uses a third-party agency, so it's been hard to get responsive from Caltrans on the status because the property owner isn't the applicant. This issue is holding up their landscaping, their parking lot, and some of the street improvements. So that's been a challenge for them. Also, apparently, the fire sprinklers in one part of the building didn't meet the fire flow requirements, and so they're having to modify their fire sprinkler plan, which was approved by the fire district, but then they have to do some reconstruction to augment what was installed previously. Maybe for a lesser issue is coordinating with the Napa County for health permit for their kitchen and their swimming pool. So both the city manager and I have reinforced that we're here to help. If there's anything we can do to contact other agencies or work through issues, we're happy to do that to get it finished. It is encouraging that the building itself has a lot of progress and is nearly completed. The second one is Hampton Inn, another hotel, a little further down Highway 29. They have a building permit application in with the city. They received the second plan check comments back in October, and so time has passed, contacted both the property owner and the architect about this. The property owner indicated that they have some trust calculations. This is a complicated portion of the building construction, often deferred. They're still waiting for that in order to ensure that the roof is acceptable. And they too commented that they have issues with PG&E in getting utility connections made. The architect shared that they needed some guidance on how to satisfy various conditions of approval. Architect mentioned he's in I think the central part of the country. A lot of issues here in California that he's unfamiliar with. So we've scheduled a meeting with him tomorrow afternoon at our project review committee. We'll have our whole team there. He was fortunate to send us his questions, so we prepared answers. So we're ready to deliver information for him. A lot of the issues that he's concerned about are simple answers for us. So hopefully that will be able to shake things loose and we'll be able to get that part completed. We have a Sun Scare project. The Sun Square project is on Napa Junction Road, just across from the apartments next to Walmart. This one is proposed by an American Canyon nonprofit agency that helps adults with disabilities lead an independent life. So constructing a project just at the outset is a big lift for a nonprofit organization. They have a building permit application in with us, and we sent them plan check comments back in September. They mentioned that they have concerns with cost increases for materials, and that's been really holding them up. They did file for a minor modification with staff. That was approved in November. The architect contacted me to say that in an effort to control costs, they are considering approaching the city to modify their inclusionary housing requirement. Zoning code requires a certain amount of low and very low income housing in rental units, and the cost to subsidize that is pretty expensive. And so in the face of rising costs, they will be seeking alternatives. Our ordinance does allow for that, but there's a process to accept and consider and discuss what they'd like to do. And so we're certainly open and mention that to them and look forward to hearing from them soon. I also want to mention that the project, while it's 20 apartment units and office space, they phased it with the first phase being 5 units. So they're kind of taking it in pieces. The last update I have for you is our friends in Oat Hill. Their construction's well on its way. You can start to see some of the buildings being painted and faced. They're looking really crisp and nice. They are looking forward to an occupancy. They have, of course, the 2 different layers. Parcel B is the lower one, parcel A is the upper one. Parcel B is further ahead than A. There are 5 apartment buildings in the lower parcel, and they're looking for occupancy for the 2 that are on the eastern edge, kind of the hill there, and then they're leasing, recreation building. Their schedule would have them get occupancy in April, and then 3 buildings towards the rear of the property would be in May. Some of the major tasks, though, that they're facing in order to get occupancy would be completing the Napa Road gap. That's under construction today, but doesn't look like it's ready to go quite yet. And then also there is a requirement to upgrade the sewer line on Teresa Avenue. I've seen some of the markings where it will go, but at this point, talking to Edison and Public Works Department, they haven't started it yet. And he hastened to tell me he's been reminding them for quite a while. But you know, if you have apartments, you need to flush. So that sewer line's got to be there. I'm not sure what else you can do. On parcel A, there are 12 apartment buildings. Half of them have been issued, and 3 of those have received an inspection for foundation. And then the balance haven't been issued yet. Some of the major tasks for the upper tier would be undergrounding overhead utilities across the site, once again PG&E. And that's one of the reasons they've explained to me why there is still a berm on the top of the hill with the poles. They haven't had approval from PG&E to remove those poles yet. They do have truss calculations to modify the roof. That was one of their modifications that they came to the council with to reduce the pitch of the roof. But it does change some of the calculations in the way in which the roofs are constructed. And then finally, in order to provide water and fire flow, they need to complete a pump station for that. So those are some of the things, but the upper tier is further on, lower one, a little more critical perhaps with completing the road and the sewer connection. So those are some of the things that's just to give you a little context, kind of what's happening right now on these projects. And we've always been open to talking to them to help work through the issues. I know that the Public Works and city managers worked very hard on the pump station in getting the plans moving forward and offering our assistance where possible.
Brent, if I can ask a question, when they do finish that little road gap, they're also repaving the little segment that's been chewed up enough times by...
Yes, Edison did mention that too. You're correct.
Yeah.
So the construction really has done a lot of damage to the roads, which probably weren't all that great to begin with. And so that is a part of it too.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving right along to our mayor and council comments and committee reports. We'll start with you, Vice Mayor.
Well, real quickly, on Napa Valley Transportation Authority, we're meeting tomorrow, but behind the scenes, we're working on the executive recruitment, or the recruitment of replacing the executive director. Kate Miller is retiring in June, and so we're trying to get her replacement lined up before she leaves. So that's going on. I attended the North Bay League Division lunch meeting, or no, there wasn't lunch, it was a Zoom meeting. We appointed new officers. Councilmember Brando Cruz and myself were at the Watson Ranch Subcommittee meeting and discussed that project a little bit. And then I attended a league Zoom meeting on behested payments, which is a weird sounding term, but it essentially means that as an elected official, when I go out recruiting money for the Art Foundation or Kiwanis or any of the other various organizations I'm associated with, if I'm lucky and they say, I'll give you $5,000, I have to now, well, I've always had to, but I learned that I need to report that on a state form, and anytime they give you more money, you have to report that additional amount. So the good news is I probably haven't been that successful in recruiting a $5,000 donation because that offsets the bad news. If I had, I probably didn't follow the rules, and so far I'm not in jail, so life is good. But it was something that I've learned about and explains why, as much as you might think being an elected official might be a great way to persuade people, everybody else has figured that out, and it might also be a way of not being appropriate. So behested payments make sense, but it is confusing. So that's what I learned.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. City Council Member Oral.
Nothing to report, sir.
Council Member Lamartina.
Nothing to report.
And Council Member Cruz.
I have no committee reports, but I just want to say thank you to our city manager, Jason Hawley, and his staff for doing this open house today. I know it took a lot of planning to do this, and it was great to meet everybody, and just, it was a warm feeling. So thank you again for putting this all together. That's all I got.
Yeah, I will ditto that same comment. But what I did take advantage of this time is that I actually used the reporting system to report all the things I did all week, so I don't have to orally say it all out loud. So it's a good system. It's a good way to get it documented of what I've done officially. So I will encourage my colleagues to do the same.
I have gotten out of touch in that, and I've got to get myself back in gear.
I
So
wasn't trying to put you out. I was just trying to.
You're-
I wasn't trying to go there.
You're just an inspiration. I will try to do better now.
Inspiration, show off, whatever. It's the same.
It's a
thing.
competitive thing, and there for a while I was the only one doing it. Now that I've gotten lazy, now I got to get back in there. So I'll do better.
See, I was going to go right into future events, so or future agenda items. Any future agenda items for anyone? Seeing none, then I would just have to say we've concluded our business for this evening, and I would say we are adjourned for the evening. Thank you. Good night, American
We
Canyon.
skipped it. It was on there, and they had them on their desk.